Good morning. Guten Morgen. O Mensch, gib acht. Was spricht die tiefe Mitternacht? Ich schlief. Aus tiefem Schlaf bin ich erwacht. Die Welt ist tief und tiefer als der Tag gedacht. Tief ist ihr Weh. Weh spricht, vergeh. Lust. Tiefer noch als Herzeleid. Denn alle Lust will Ewigkeit, will tiefe, tiefe Ewigkeit. I hope I said it right. I will control it after I upload the video. This was the poem The Drunken Song, das trunkene Lied by Friedrich Nietzsche. As I said, the language of Nietzsche is absolutely unique and of unparalleled density, and I will soon show you this on a small example that is almost not, it cannot be translated in all its density. So I will show you the German part and then try to translate it and explain why it can't be translated. In this video today, we will speak about shadow work with Friedrich Nietzsche and Carl Gustav Jung. All right, let us straight get to my example why Nietzsche's language can't be translated and is too dense in many cases. So, as I said, Nietzsche was a calm person that avoided the spotlight, and the spotlight avoided him. He was a true intuitive introvert that was searching for his privacy, going on long walks. He mistrusted every thought that came to him when he was sitting in a dark chamber, like most philosophers would. So he was loving the thought that comes to him when he was walking outside in nature, or at least walking in the house. By the way, when you're running, when you're walking outside, your brain halves get harmonized, and the rhythm of your steps is creating a it harmonizes your brain waves as well. Therefore, when you're running and breathing and get a lot of oxygen, this is when the best ideas and thoughts come to you. And this Nietzsche was in love with his anima, with his muse. Her name was Salome. She was a Russian philosopher, an intellectual Russian woman that was very independent for her time, and very educated. So this was unusual for these times, and he absolutely fell in love with her. And of course it was not reciprocated the way he wanted it. Therefore, the need for poetry. When he met her one day, I think he prepared it for her. He said something very short, but in these few words, he shows all his genius. But before we get there, I need to drink a small sip of coffee. Okay. He said, von welchem Stern sind wir uns zugefallen? So this means, from which star have we fallen to each other? Yeah, it means, so von welchem Stern means from which star. I don't know, maybe he said from which stars, von welchen Sternen, but I think it was from which star, I don't know. But it means, yeah, from which star or which stars have we fallen to each other. But in German, this word is absolutely, it's not a coincidence that he chose this word, because it has more layers of meaning, and Nietzsche made his mother tongue, his German language, shimmer and shine in a kind of magic way. Because sometimes you read one sentence forward, then backward, then you look at some certain words, then you see double, triple meaning patterns. Anyway, the thing is, this word zugefallen is the genius part here. It has another meaning, not only the falling from somewhere together, it also means coincidence. So it's the same word, as if in English, in English, no similar word exists, because it must be a word that describes falling together as well as coincidence in one word. So one description why the word Zufall means coincidence in German is because it's like when you throw a dice. The dices are then falling. They are falling together, something like that. And dices can be used, in, is it coincidence? Is it not coincidence? So, yeah. Zufall, it is just from fate. It is falling out of fate, And yeah, and this is genius. It has so many poetic, it implicates so many poetic pictures, like fallen stars, fallen angels, fallen into fate, fallen into life. This idea of being fallen, and then from another world, from an alien world, from another star, onto this earth. Therefore, they are both aliens that, for some strange coincidence, happen to fall together. They share very intimate intellectual knowledge, and they are the only ones who understand each other, probably. And he puts all of this in this small little sentence. And by this, by the way, he is describing a concept that is not there yet, and it is synchronicity. So he suggests that it is no coincidence by pointing out that it cannot be coincidence, and that is synchronicity. Synchronicities are things that happen to you, and when you look at it statistically in a rational, calculative way, there is no way that this can be statistically just a random. It's not just a random mediocre outcome. This is absolutely outstanding, and yeah, it cannot. It's not. It is against all odds what is happening. In other words, Nietzsche was saying, if there are two people amongst, I don't know, 6 billion at that time, I don't know how many people there were in this time, that are meant to be together, and they could fall anywhere on this planet. They could also, so they could have missed each other both in space as well as in time, but they didn't. And he puts all of this together in a small sentence. Therefore, he describes a synchronicity. And this also shows how impactful he was, because Carl Gustav Jung was for sure reading this, and it could be that this encouraged Carl Gustav Jung to create the concept of synchronicity. And he also researched, he did statistical research to describe true synchronicities. Okay. So this just to this, and I believe, Carl Gustav Jung probably had some sort of genius, but the thing is, I cannot rate geniuses in a hierarchy or something, because I am not a genius. But I have an opinion and a feeling. And my feeling is that Nietzsche is the more impactful genius, simply. And I think Carl Gustav Jung was very impressed with Nietzsche, maybe a little bit envious, but a person like Carl Gustav Jung was also not, I think he was not grandiose. I think he was doing a lot of self-work. I mean, he invented shadow work. And by the way, Nietzsche also was not grandiose, I think. Anyway, but we are coming now to the shadow work aspect of this message. I'm saying this because Carl Gustav Jung was criticizing Nietzsche. And this criticism is very fruitful, very helpful to understand both Nietzsche and Carl Gustav Jung. But I feel it's a respectful and honoring criticism, because huge and big people, when they criticize, when they attack someone, it's not the intention to devalue this person. Is rather the biggest honor you can get is to be, it's almost a bigger honor to be criticized than to be validated by people in this, of this caliber. So yesterday I just opened a book of Carl Gustav Jung, and I read a small criticism, because he was talking about what shadow work means. That it means, so Carl Gustav Jung's concept of shadow work, when he describes it, it means to self-assess in a realistic way and not be rebellious or fleeing into fantasies. He literally, Carl Gustav Jung writes about grandiose fantasies. And I think he wrote this before the concepts of narcissism and borderline and psychosis have been invented. I'm not sure about this. I'm not Sam Vaknin. But in other words, he is talking about fleeing into fantasies. And so what Carl Gustav Jung says, what shadow work is, to scan yourself for all kinds of fantasies that ease you, that ease your life, that make your life easier. And these could be externalized fantasies that help you to feel protected, or they are anxiolytic fantasies that reduce anxiety. So if you believe in a god or in a savior, or in an external purpose of any kind of belief system. That is then, and then you merge with that because you love this, you need this. You say, this is my world, this is my belief, this is the system, and it protects me, it helps me to sleep better, and so on and so forth. Shadow work would mean to carefully, because we're talking about self-love here, it's not to force ourselves to live in a abandoned world, in a cold abandoned world that is all bad, and we are the stoic superhero that still lives super strong. That would be another grandiose, stupid fantasy, right? So what he means is to scan yourself for all kinds of fantasy concepts you have and try to see what they are shielding you from, and dare to give up this shield and see what strength you need, what ability do you need to be that you fear, and not be in rebellion also, because what he wrote, Carl Gustav Jung, was writing, don't flee into a fantasy, into a heroic fantasy of into a heroic fantasy beyond good and evil. And this is a straight attack at Nietzsche. Heroic is a criticism that means immaturity, because the hero is immature. The warrior is more mature than the hero. It's the same archetype that has become more mature. Children play heroes. Men are warriors. So Beyond Good and Evil was a book of Nietzsche, of course, and here I have to say Carl Gustav Jung cannot criticize the book or the genius work of Nietzsche. He can touch this Beyond Good and Evil, but the point he makes is valuable. He makes the point. He claims Nietzsche, instead of making shadow work, Nietzsche was fleeing in an immature way in his philosophy of Beyond Good and Evil. So Nietzsche, in an immature way, like a child, was destroying all value systems, all moral systems, everything, like a child in a temper tantrum. And this was also anxiolytic. It reduced anxiety for Nietzsche, because if Nietzsche destroys all work before and after him of philosophy that frees him of all moral implications, he is beyond good and evil, because he has destroyed good and evil. And Carl Gustav Jung analyzes this. He's a psychoanalyst, a clinician, and he says, instead of doing this, or before doing this, one must stop this rebellion, accept the world the way it is, accept the moral system the way it is, take everything the way it is, and do not flee into, if your problem is good and evil, don't destroy good and evil and live beyond it. That is the immature, childish way, the fantasy. Rather, accept that you are good and evil. So not beyond good and evil, but accept that you are good and evil. Because the problem, his analysis of Nietzsche's psychology in this case would be of his psychic state, or what he should have done to to grow before he goes on his journey. He said, the problem of Nietzsche was he was afraid to be all evil or all good, and it has he did not dare to accept the world the way it is. I mean, it's a grandiose thing to destroy everything and to have an angry attack, a temper tantrum, and so it's a grandiose fantasy to destroy all of that and then live in this world that you have created beyond good and evil. No, dare to be good and evil and look at all these parts in yourself. Do not run away from them. That being said, the third person in today's talk, we had Nietzsche, we have Carl Gustav Jung analyzing Nietzsche in terms of shadow work, and the third person is Sam Vaknin. He said something that is also interesting for this connection today, that venting off or speaking, verbalizing, revisiting trauma is not always helpful and healing. So when we talk of, and this was, by the way, what Sam Vaknin said was advice for a good psychotherapist. A good psychotherapist should know when a patient should not talk about every traumatic experience over and over again. They should not push or force them to do this. In other words, when you force yourself to revisit your own traumatic experiences over and over again, or you speak them over and over again, or only once, this is not necessarily helping all the time. We are not mechanical machines, and there is not a recipe to go. And in other words, repression and forgetting can be healing and the right decision in a certain point of time. And we are talking about self-love, and self-love can mean repress and forget. The same applies to the shadow, because the trauma and the shadow often have some form of connection. Therefore, I want to tell all of you who do shadow work or who have traumatic experiences, we need to operate in the spirit of self-love, and sometimes this means we don't have to integrate the whole shadow in a short time in a perfect way. We are not supposed to be perfect. We don't have to vent off, speak, work through all trauma at very quickly. This could be this is not necessarily self-love. This could be self-hate. This could be death drive. We need to find our self-loving life drive. Therefore I would suggest everybody to put the self-love first, which is a difficult concept, but probably when you have the right frequency to feel it, it should be simple, and it must guide you in your shadow work and your trauma work. I see it as a metaphorically as like a tree that had some impact. Maybe the lightning hit the tree or the storm broke away some part of the tree. And it's good to, as a human being now, to learn from this, to do shadow work, but at some point we need to grow. First, we just need to grow new. We need to live and function in life, and then take the next step in integration. Don't do all at once. Talking about functioning in life. See, when we're talking about the moral problem that Nietzsche saw when he destroyed all the moral implications and the problem of shame and guilt that is connected to moral, and therefore creating a lot of dissonance with the life drive and the death drive. Because when you simply follow the forces of your subconsciousness and these raw forces of nature, you might get very conflicted with the moral system. Now, what I want to say is, the Greek that had another moral and virtue system, the ancient Greek, they had these multiple flawed gods that also had all kinds of trouble and fights going on, okay? What I want to say is, the Greek were not looking so much at what is right or wrong, but they were looking at something else. They were looking at the outcome. Is the outcome good for society, for the people? So the Greek were looking from a point of self-love, a point of love, what is fruitful, what is good for society. But they did not judge what is right or wrong based on a dualistic, simplified worldview. So you can't abuse this system and say, I want to live like the Greek, I live beyond good and evil, everything is allowed. And if you do this, then you need to look, first of all, at the outcome of what you're doing, at functionality. Is this what you do good for everyone? And this is, so there's always a guiding principle, okay? We can't escape from that. And I think we have to consider that this is the better way I think it's better to look at the outcome and what people do. We don't necessarily have to judge it with categories like this is right, this is wrong, because in this book it is written that you shall not do this. No, but if we see the outcome and the effect on society, is it healthy, or is it rather pathologically? Is it traumatizing? Is it creating dysfunctionality? This should become higher in hierarchy of judgment, because it judges people for what they do, for the outcome of what they do, and because the moral system can also be is more prone to manipulation. Okay, that being said, take it as it resonates and put self-love first, and consider to look more at results and outcome, and take it slow.